Hi, I'm Rebecca Fox, and I took a left at the valley.
I know we shouldn't have to scream that we're atheists, you know. We don't have non-astrologers and all that. But with the religious people taking over the world, I mean, we can either speak up or be pushed into a corner.
I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith in unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist.
Coming at you from Christian Hell, this is Left of the Valley. My name is Kevin, and I surmise that if two wrongs don't make a right, try three. Joining me as usual is part of the team that will tell you that a day without sunshine is like, night.
Or BC.
Or BC.
I never thought of it that way, but it makes sense.
And she knows that the laziness is nothing more than the habit of resting before being tired, Nancy.
Wait, I gotta wake up to think about that.
And she told me that if I don't have anything nice to say about anybody, I should come sit next to her.
I could use some of that.
Ladies, welcome back.
Oh, good to be here. It's a sunny day.
It's a sunny, beautiful day. So it's such a shame we don't only have part of the crew there, but hey, that's what happens.
That's okay. We got the best. Oops. They're going to listen and feel bad. That's okay. That's what happens when you don't show up.
Exactly. That's right. Well, that's right. You don't show up, we have the right to
pick on you.
We get to pick on you. That's right. So today we're going to have a very interesting show. We're going to be talking to Ira Pastor, and he works for a company, a biotech company called BIOQUARK, and we're going to be talking about biomimicry. So that's going to be very interesting. But first, let's do a bit of chit-chat. We got lots of things to talk about. Ladies, did you hear that Newsweek apparently said that 500 doctors in Canada signed a petition protesting their own pay raise?
I had heard something about that.
Yes, they are asking the money to be given to the nurses and the patients. This is in the province of Quebec, of course, my home. And it's a petition in French. There's apparently over 213 general practitioners, 184 specialists, 149 resident doctors, and 162 medical students as well. Now, apparently in the province, the average salary of a doctor is about $260,000 gross. And the organization called Médecins Québécois pour le Régime, the MQRP, authorized a February 17th a letter opposing the $500 million raise for the specialists, calling it indecent. While in the meantime, the nurses and all that, they're facing cuts from the province.
Yeah, that's...
Only in Canada would you see something like that, huh?
Yeah.
Some doctors say, no,
Very noble.
Very noble. And I think
Absolutely.
it brings back that line they always say, the Michael Morrison in one of his movies. In Canada, we live in a world of we, not a world of me.
I mean, in an ideal world of there would be enough money for everybody without the doctors refusing. But it's a great gesture. Who knows? Maybe things will turn around a little bit.
Nancy, you'll love this one. Did you see that somebody edited Wikipedia?
Oh,
and
yeah.
The invertebrate page classification,
I loved it.
They inserted Republican Paul Ryan between horseshoe crabs and jellyfish for spineless people.
I'm surprised they elevated him that high, but
that was just beautiful. Of course, it's been changed since, but that was just...
I know whoever did that was... we'll never know because it was anonymous, but I hope we see a little bit more of that. It just, we need a laugh. In politics,
especially in U.S. politics.
That's what I'm talking about.
Well, here's something not to laugh at. The Trump administration, 4 years after the U.S. actually pledged to help the world fight epidemics like Ebola, remember the Ebola scare we had? They decided to cut the Center for Disease Control funding by 80%.
Because we don't need that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not surprised. It seems as though anytime there's an opportunity to cut funding for something that's absolutely worthwhile and will help people, they zoom in, like a targeted missile and cut it. And it just puts money into their pockets or into the military, which they dearly love. So it's so discouraging.
Yeah.
Because there's the consequences of that are so enormous.
Exactly.
Wait to the next one. Wait to the next.
Right? In 2014, it was part of the the money was part of a global health security program that was designed to train workers in detection. In 2014, $600 million was used to fight Ebola and other diseases like that. And the money will run out by 2019. The CDC, the White House said they will not reinvest and they will not reissue the funding. In the Congo last year, they had an Ebola outbreak, and the CDC and their efforts contained that.
I'm going to say something controversial. Not for us controversial. Yeah,
wait a minute.
I know. It just comes as a shock. I truly think there's a racial component to what they're doing. If you look at where the cuts are, and you look at the races of the people who live where the cuts are, do you notice that there seems to be a little pattern there?
Absolutely, yeah. It could be. It's certain that the current White House looks very inwards, for sure. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. They just want to eliminate everybody who's not white, at least from helping or becoming citizens.
I don't see why they would do something like that. I mean, little known fact here: there's actually cases of the Black Plague happening in the U.S. So you would think this. You don't want to undercut the Black Plague. I mean, this is something out of medieval times. It's still happening in the U.S. It doesn't happen here in Canada. Yeah. But you don't want to cut in a program like that, right?
Yeah, but they probably will.
Nancy, you remember this guy Roy Moore?
Boy, you're just hitting all my... You got all the Nancy buttons lit up today.
Well, the former Senate candidate and religious nutcase, he's being sued by one of his victims. Her name is Lee Korfman. And apparently she was touched when she was 14 and he was in his 30s. So now he's broke and he's begging for money.
Yeah, because we're going to give him money.
Well, apparently he's got a GoFundMe thing, and he's trying to raise $250,000 for his defense. And so far, he's raised about $32,000, and now he's desperately pleading for money. So I thought that right here at Left of the Valley, we sent him a thoughts and prayers.
Let's be generous. We'll send a double dose.
Double dose of prayers. Yeah, totally.
I guess he doesn't want to cut into his own, hidden away millions. He wants everybody else's money to pay for it. The man is just,
He's a piece of something.
I was thinking the same thing. Thank you for saying it.
Yeah. Well, you know what? If he really dries up, he could try, maybe turning to porn and being a porn star, a gay porn star or something like that. It might actually get us some...
Man, it's a good thing I didn't have a big breakfast this morning.
Did you guys hear that Lil Kim, we talk about the North Korea dictator Kim Jong-un, has requested to actually meet President Orange?
That's it. The two worst haircuts on the planet get together.
Oh, I didn't see that one coming at all, sorry. So this is according to the South Korean National Security. So now, before people say, "Oh, hey, Trump's doing the right, doing great things," now they want to meet. Canada and the U.S. had summits in Vancouver to discuss peaceful North Korean plans, and North Korea actually agreed to restrain nuclear testing. At first, Trump opposed. I should say. He expressed hope and skepticism, but now apparently he's going to meet with them. So now apparently this is going to happen very soon, actually April or May. So this is going to be interesting. And you know what? Boy. As much as I'm not a fan of Trump, and maybe not as bad, maybe I don't hate him as much as you do, Nancy. But if he manages to pull this through, this might actually be worth his entire stupid presidency.
When you look at the way he flies by the seat of his pants, and lack of impulse control, plus not wanting to learn anything about diplomacy or how government works, how do you think this is going to go?
Well, I totally agree. But you know what? All the previous presidents trying the diplomatic way, it didn't work.
That's true.
This stupid approach might actually work. I mean, maybe I'm being naively optimistic here. But if it does, and North Korea comes down and actually kind of becomes like a regular normal country, this will be worth all the stupidness he's done today.
They could become...
It might be his swan song as a president.
They could become best buds. It's hard to tell, but I know Kim Jong-un has been... he and his father and his grandfather have been wanting photo ops with the president forever. So this is something that I think that's part of their strategy. We have yet to find out.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes.
We'll see how it goes. It's like a TV reality show. Boy, oh boy! We
exactly.
get to
we gotta have to keep an eye on that.
The big bad guys get to meet. So we'll see.
And we got some good feminist news to finish all this. Did you guys hear that Brenda Lucky is going to be the new RCMP commissioner?
Heard that.
She's been appointed. She's going to take office April the 16th. This happened after, of course, all the complaints they had against the RCMP of sexual harassment. There was a $100 million settlement that was paid by the RCMP. She apparently has a lot of history of helping First Nations as well.
I heard that.
So the first female commissioner of the RCMP, and good for her.
Yeah, no, that's
great news.
Yeah, that's good. I hope she gets a lot of backing and a lot of support.
Yes,
and
that's what we hope.
Yeah, I think and it's nice that this is happening for Women's History Month.
Yes.
A lot of good things are happening because it's Women's History Month.
And another good story about this. Did you guys hear there's a new $10 bill?
Absolutely.
And it's featuring Viola Desmond. It's been released by the Bank of Canada, and her sister, her sister Wanda, were actually there for the revealing. And her sister Wanda actually got the first new $10 bill. Now, the circulation of this bill won't happen until the end of the year. Viola Desmond, for people that don't know, she's pretty much like the Canadian Rosa Parks. She, in November 8th, 1946, she was driving her car broke down, and while her car was being fixed, she decided to go watch a movie in Nova Scotia, and she went into the white-only section. And she was basically kicked out, although she wanted to pay the extra because apparently it was an extra fee of luxury or something like that. And she offered to pay, and they said no. And then she was charged by the prosecution something ridiculous like not paying a penny for the extra tax because that's how much it cost at the time.
Yeah.
And she kind of stood her ground, and today she's being recognized. So it's pretty cool.
Good.
Awesome.
It is cool.
It is
cool.
very, very cool. All right.
Well, we're cool up here.
Well, no, but I mean, we often see the kind of stuff that happens in the States, and we easily forget that we also had a history of segregation and racism as well. Maybe not as poignant or as difficult as the United States, but we certainly did. And it's good to see that this is coming easily to an end as well. Oh, and last but not least, in case you haven't caught it, I was actually invited on the Beyond the Trailer Park show.
I saw that.
Yeah, their last show there on Monday features myself and more of their guests there, so we had fun doing that. They're an interesting bunch.
It was split screen, so
Yeah.
you got a lot of FaceTime in with
I'm
the
not sure
girls.
that's a good thing, but
No, it was nice. I enjoyed watching because it was split screen, and we could see, whoever was handling the board was doing a really nice job.
no, I think it's done automatically by the computer. As soon as your voice comes in, the computer switches to whatever camera. So I don't know.
Such high-tech things.
Yeah, it's high-tech things, exactly.
Yeah, no, it was.
Maybe
it
one
was
day
nice.
we'll do that with our show.
Yeah.
Then we need 4 cameras here.
No, we could tell you guys were having a really fun time, and it was kind of a meandering, nice, friendly conversation. So,
Yeah, exactly.
Congrats to everybody for a successful show. We enjoyed it.
Yeah, cool. All right. So, Nancy, you got a top 10 for us?
I do. I certainly do. I thought we'd do something. Well, this is a little bit like something we've done before, but this is the top 10 most livable cities.
Ooh.
And some good news sort of in the middle, as a matter of fact. Okay, the 10 most livable cities is put out by a group called the Global Livability Report. They do it every year, and they decide their ranking based on the stability of the city, the amount of health care, the quality of the health care, culture and environment, education, and infrastructure. That's how they rate whether a city is livable or not livable. So the number 10 most livable city is Hamburg, Germany. Germany has a pretty good reputation at this point, for being livable and changing, the environment in a number of different ways. Number 9 is Finland and the city Helsinki. We all figure that's got to be livable.
There had to be some Scandinavian
right?
countries in there.
Okay. And New Zealand, Auckland, New Zealand is number 8. Perth, Australia, number 7.
Hold on, I got something to say here.
Okay.
About Auckland, New Zealand.
Okay.
Everybody talks about New Zealand, how beautiful the scenery is and all that. And it's great, don't get me wrong. It's absolutely great. But you know what? It's one thing that we don't do enough as Canadians. We have that same scenery right here, if not better. If not better. I mean, have you seen the Canadian Rockies for fun? They make the New Zealand mountains look like nothing.
Go and experience it, guys.
Yes. And it's one thing that we don't do as Canadians. We don't, well, maybe this is not the right word. We don't brag enough about our stuff. We're not good at advertising or marketing ourselves. We're really not.
Because we're Canadian.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, then, just hang in there and listen to the rest of the
No, of
list.
course.
Okay, a couple of surprises coming up. Okay, Adelaide, Australia, another beautiful city. Here we go. Calgary, Canada.
Really? Calgary?
Yeah. Number 4, Toronto.
Really? Toronto?
Oh,
God.
Yeah. Livable, I guess, overall.
Oh, livable, yeah.
Yeah, livable. Okay, number 3, Vancouver.
I was wondering when that was
We've
going to come
got
out.
three
Canadian cities right there.
3 Canadian cities right there. Number 2, Vienna, Austria. I guess a lot of people love to go. I mean, they've had a lot of culture, and art and things like that, which has made it people flock.
There's a long history of Vienna.
Yeah. Number 1. Anybody want to guess what number 1 city is?
Detroit.
On somebody's list, I guess, from some war-torn country, Melbourne, Australia.
Oh.
Yeah, so Australia had 3 livable cities, and Canada 3 livable cities.
They have a way to say it. Don't they say Melbourne or something like that?
Yeah,
Australians, they don't say Melbourne or something like that. They say Melbourne or something.
Yeah. Anyway, just for fun, would anybody like to guess the least livable city in the world?
Oh boy. This is gonna be something that's at war right now.
It may come as a little surprise.
Really?
I don't know. The least, because you're gonna think about
something at war like Syria.
Yeah, you're gonna think about Syria. But actually, the least livable city in the world is Kiev in the Ukraine.
Really?
Yeah.
Did they say why?
In the rating, it just is the lowest in both in the stability. I guess was one. It ranks 131st in all of the different countries. Yeah.
Wow!
Yeah.
I did not expect that at all.
Yeah.
Good.
I didn't either. I was very surprised to see that.
Okay.
So, there we go. Anyway. It's lovely to live in a country that has 3. We need to market more, perhaps.
Yes,
and
I
not
think we
be
do.
as humble and not be as sorry.
Well, I mean,
but
have you
have a
noticed?
lot to be proud about.
Like right here on TV in BC, you'll see ads like for Oregon. Like come and visit Oregon. It's beautiful down here. I said, do you really think Oregon has anything to offer that we don't already have up here? I'm sorry, I don't think so.
No, I know when I first came up here in 1987, I truly fell in love with Vancouver, and I thought, one of these days I'm going to marry this guy that I'm with, and we're coming back.
Yeah.
And I was really very happy to come up.
There's also a few things that we need to put in there. Americans, for example, being our neighbors to the south and the only country beside us, are not travelers. They don't travel as much as Canadians do. So they have a tendency to do a lot of vacations within the U.S., not necessarily outside of the U.S. So that might be one of the reasons why we don't advertise so much or something like that. But I'd be curious to see some stats on but maybe, I'm sure the Americans are still the highest number of visitors in the country here, but after that, where are they coming from? Are they coming from China? Are they coming from Europe? I'd be really, really curious to see that. So.
It used to be I would see a lot of German and Japanese tourists up here.
There's a lot of Germans
mainly, the two groups to me that were most noticeable years ago were the Japanese and it got, but Chinese probably, considering the amount of real estate that they like to buy up here.
Well,
but that
whether they come as a tourist or
as tourists, but I know the Japanese and the Germans.
Yeah, it's really
sure.
interesting.
Anyway.
At the end of it, we have beautiful scenery.
Oh, we do.
My grandfather used to be a bus driver and used to drive a minor league hockey team across the entire country.
Oh.
And he used to tell me, he says, there is no more beautiful country than this place. You will find absolutely everything you like. You want deserts? You can find deserts. You like mountains? You can find mountains. You want forest?
Absolutely.
You will find anything you want that the earth can offer right here in this country because it's so vast and there's so much of it that still remains, untouched.
Which is a good thing. I think there is a conscious desire to protect and preserve, what we have, and not stick an oil well in the middle of it.
Also, the temperature can drop drastically when you go up there. Maybe not anymore because of climate change, but you know what I mean. Well, thank you, Nancy. That was a great top 10 as usual.
Yeah, that's kind of fun.
Yeah. And to come on such a nice day, too.
I know. It's a beautiful day out there. It's going to be a great weekend. They're talking about 19 degrees Monday.
Wow.
Here in Abbotsford. So it's like summer weather here.
Yeah.
Well,
for our U.S. listeners, that's close to 70.
Is it? Okay. I'm so glad you can translate that way better than I. I'm always trying. Okay, so it's like plus 36 times 2 or something like that, right? The conversion, something like that.
Yeah,
Whenever
you double.
You double?
You double, and then you add 32 because...
I was close.
Yeah, because the zero...
double and add 32.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
My grandma will give it to me in Fahrenheit. Like, Grandma, Canadian degrees, please.
Yeah, metric. We're in metric here. We've been metric for a long time. Although there's still some things that we don't do in metric. For example, I never tell my weight in kilograms. It's always in pounds,
Yeah.
In the industry I work, it's a lot of inches, too. It's not
I have trouble when they say there's so many centimeters of rain. I don't know what that is. I want to know in inches how much rain.
Exactly, right? As, when I tell my height, I say I'm 5'10", I'm not 1.8 meters or something like that,
Yeah.
So there's still some things that we still use the imperial system. But the rest of it is, it's all metric. Metric's better. To our U.S. listeners, metric is better. Anyway, moving on. It's time for our other segment we always love, called Another Brilliant Moment.
Brought to you by religion.
Oh, I have an assist. I love that. Now, I'm sorry. One of our listeners says he doesn't like this music, but I'm sorry, bud. Maybe we'll change it one episode for you, but not today. All right. So, let's see. Did you guys hear that this is a bit of an older story? Women in Texas may have to literally fight for their freedom and their lives to make sure some Republican lawmakers don't get their way.
What?
Yeah.
Again.
Donald Trump.
You have to add again.
Again, exactly. During his presidential campaign in 2016, Donald Trump actually mentioned jail and said that women should receive some form of punishment for having an abortion. Well, now, some GOP rep, Tony Tinderholt, has apparently introduced a bill called Bill 948, which would punish any woman for having an abortion with prison time.
It won't get there. It won't.
Well, I hope not.
It won't.
This is Texas. This is Texas.
It's Texas, but I don't know exactly how the primaries turned out in every district, but I know the Democrats are on the heels of a lot of the Republicans, and there's a chance that they may put any legislator that puts frivolous lawsuits up in jail. So watch it, Tony. Is it Tony?
Yeah, Tony.
Yeah, okay.
Apparently this legislation contains zero exception for rape victims, victims of incest, and women who have an abortion to save their lives. So we're not sure where it is right now because, like I said, this is an older story, so I'm not going to keep on going with this.
No, I wonder whether or not he felt emboldened to do this after the legislature passed the fact that women have to have additional rape insurance in order to be covered if they're raped. So
insurance.
That may be,
That's brilliant.
Why? I know. Yeah, because it's Texas.
Well, that could easily become an insurance scam, right? Hey, I just have a rape insurance for $1 million, and then the next day, hey, I was just raped.
Yeah, well, it's Texas. Men are men, and women are second-class citizens. You know how it goes.
That's just sad.
It is.
Well, moving on from stupid to stupid state. The stupid it burns. Florida State Representative Kimberly Daniels thanks gods for slavery, claiming, quote, "If it wasn't for slavery, I might be somewhere in Africa worshipping a tree."
Oh, I actually heard about this one.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? She's the Daniels. She's the sponsor of the bill that recently passed in the Florida House that would force every public school to put "In God We Trust." Remember that one?
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's obviously a nutcase. During her closing speech of "In God We Trust" bill, she cited the recent shooting at the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland that happened a couple of weeks ago. And Daniel said that God is the light and our schools need light in them like never before. And so we kept making a joke about calling an electrician. She addresses that she added that the gun issue needs to be addressed, but the real thing that needs to be addressed is the issues of the heart. Yeah, exactly.
Thoughts and prayers to you, honey.
Oh yeah, so she's been completely open about her theocratic goals, and she preaches to exorcise demons and speaks in tongues. So she's a nutcase. So in a jaw-dropping clip from the FFRF video, Daniel declares, quote, "I thank God for slavery. If it wasn't for slavery, I might be somewhere in Africa worshipping a tree." Wow.
I wonder if she's related to Michelle Bachmann. At least there were two of them that are, nut cases that can console each other.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, okay. And here's another story. It's like a rain dance, only with Jesus and magic underwear. Utah Governor Gary Herbert issued bizarre Facebook posting asking citizens to pray for snow. You can pray for rain, but now you gotta pray for snow.
Pray for snow?
Yeah. In an embarrassing and ridiculous bit of religious pandering, Utah Governor Gary Herbert sent a letter to faith leaders across the state asking them to pray and their congregation to pray for snow. Herbert also posted a copy of the letter.
Is that for skiing purposes?
I don't know.
What? The rain I get, and I guess if you want like a good snow cap or whatever.
Maybe it's just getting too hot in Utah. Here's the letter. It says, "Dear religious leader, I am writing today to invite you and your faith community to unite in thanksgiving and prayer during the first week of March 2018. During the bitterly hot, dry and windy summer of 2012, Utah has become a tinderbox. We witnessed heroism from our firefighters across the state, but after all we could physically do, most of the states still remain under the red flag warning."
I feel like rain might be a little more helpful in that case.
Well, in the winter, right? So maybe that's where they're asking for snow. At that time, I reached out to our interfaith community with a request for extra measures of providential help in our battle against the fires. And you responded with prayers in your synagogues, your mosque, your cathedral, your chapels, and your homes, asking that life and property be protected and that the elements be tempered. This is a politician. I can't believe this. Within days of your collective prayers, the rains came. And not just any rain, but gentle, soaking rains above the winds that would have exasperated the fires. The elements had, in fact, been tempered. Today, our state faces another similar challenge. Although we have just received some fresh snow, this year's uncharacteristically warm and dry weather pattern have left the state with about half the snowpack that it might experience in a regular year. It's called climate change, dumbass.
Well, who needs climate change when you have prayer?
Because the health of our waterways, our wetlands, our agriculture, and our forests in particular depends on the abundant snowpack, and because none of us can afford to witness the destruction that comes with wildfire, I am again reaching out to you and your faith communities with an invitation to unite in prayer. As you gather in your places of worship and in your homes during the first week of March, would you please join me in a special prayer? First and foremost, I believe we should thank our Creator for the extraordinary blessing that we enjoy as a state, but I will also encourage us to pray that the elements be tempered on our behalf. Thank you for considering this special request, and thank you all for all that you do to meet the significant spiritual needs of the people of the great state.
I'd like to know how many times from March on they've actually gotten snow in Utah. I want to know how, what are the odds that the prayers get. And your point? This is a Republican Governor, your point, please?
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. But I mean, my God, this is 2018, and what is he going to do next? Is he going to gather everybody? Is he going to do some kind of dance to make sure the snow and the rain comes?
Makes sense to me.
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, why send somebody to the university to get a degree in science and have to pay them when you can dance around a fire and ask for prayer? It's free. And if it works, I mean, if they can establish a track record, heck, I'll go out there with them.
It's like, this is the same guy, you know, and I'm just guessing here, but I will bet this is the same guy that says climate change is not true. This is
Absolutely,
yeah.
it has to
There's
be.
no such thing as climate change,
No.
but now we're gonna pray for more snow. Like somehow that's gonna. I don't know what. To
I
do.
know.
Crazy world. All right.
Okay. I mean, on that note.
On that note, thank you, ladies, for your input. So let's go to commercial real quick here, and when we come back, we'll be talking to Ira Pastor about biomimicry. So stay with us.
Do you know where Saskatchewan is? Probably not. It's in Canada. If you do, you might know a city named Regina. In Regina, there's a studio. And in that studio, there are, at least once a month, a bunch of skeptical atheist geeks and goofballs who get together to do a podcast. We are the Brainstorm crew, and we're trying to help spread a bit of reason and critical thinking while still having fun. Never taking things too seriously, but still not accepting everything we're told, we go through different topics, exploring them in depth and often disagreeing. We try to stick to provable facts, and we never trust a myth. That's why we say we're woo-free since 2013. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, or Spreaker under Brainstorm, or check out our website, brainstormblog.net. I can't promise you'll always agree with us, but I can promise you'll have fun listening to us.
A Canadian, a New Yorker, and a Southern belle walked into a podcast, and all hell broke loose. Seriously though, what happens when we three ladies get together? Well, definitely a lot of talking. And accents. Funny accents. Well, I don't have an accent, but my co-hosts sure do. We mix North, South, and the Great White North together for 2 hours of pure secular discussion. Nothing is off limits. From goofy religions like Scientology, woo like ghost hunting and alternative medicine, to hardcore history, hermeneutics, sex, and science. We cover it all. What the heck is a hermeneutic? Well, it's not a guy named Herman who sings falsetto, that's for sure. Join Beth, Ashley, and myself, Deborah, every Monday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, and we take you beyond the trailer park and bring the conversation to life. Join us live on YouTube and participate in the conversation via the Q&A system, or catch us later on Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes, and Nobex. Visit www.beyondthetrailerpark.com for links to the show and our upcoming schedule. Bring your wine and sweet tea and settle in for fun facts and free thinking. We happily wear the explicit tag, though, so make sure to wash out your mouth with something tasty before listening. That's live at 9:30 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. Come give us a like and a share, no matter what type of accent you have.
9 million children die every year before they reach the age of 5. Any God who would allow children by the millions to suffer and die in this way either can do nothing to help them or doesn't care to. He is therefore either impotent or evil. But this, to me, is the true horror of religion. Okay, it allows perfectly decent and sane people to believe by the billions what only lunatics could believe on their own. Okay, if you wake up tomorrow morning thinking that saying a few Latin words over your pancakes is going to turn them into the body of Elvis Presley, you have lost your mind. But if you think more or less the same thing about a cracker and the body of Jesus, you're just a Catholic.
All right, so joining us live here is Ira Pastor. He is the CEO of a company called BIOQUARK, which is a company that actually is working on reviving dead brains and repairing organ tissue. He's a snappy dresser and a snazzy dancer. Ira, thank you so much for joining us here at Left of the Valley.
Thanks for having me, Kevin. It's a pleasure.
I guess we should really start. This is an interesting way to describe a company. I guess we should really start by asking, what exactly does BioQuark do?
Sure. So, we're a biotech company, and our whole mission is, in essence, going back to nature and looking at all of the what I refer to as sort of superhero organisms that live on this planet with us, which from a health perspective are just so much further advanced than we are. And whether we're talking about things like salamanders who can regenerate entire organs and limbs when they lose them, including things like spinal cords, heart, eyeballs, parts of their brains, or whether we're talking about other species like planarian worms that, get cancer and shrug it off as if it was the common cold, or whether we go to the far end of the spectrum and we talk about some organisms that do not age, those that age in reverse, or those that even die and come back to life. We're basically wanted to take a second look and say, we as humans are pretty weak when it comes to doing a lot of this stuff.
Tell me about
so
that.
We want to sort of figure out how we can reconnect with these abilities that obviously, nature has put here in front of us, which we do not possess yet. Maybe taking a new look with technologies of the 21st century and figuring out how to reawaken them in humans.
So essentially, you guys are doing what they call biomimicry, and you're trying to apply these abilities to our everyday life, whether in technology or in a bio sense for us in biology, right?
Exactly. Biomimicry is a great, I haven't used that word in a while, but it is an awesome term. And yes, exactly. Mimicking everything we see from the plants to the salamanders to the fish, and figuring out where we went wrong and how we can start once again to have some of these abilities.
Now, you guys have officially become my favorite company of all time just by doing that kind of science. So I congratulate you. Is this a growing field? I mean, it's something that most people have never really heard of, except maybe in deep science circles of science.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting because, I come out of the more traditional pharmaceutical industry for the last 30 years. And there, although, much of the 20th century was based on, natural products that came primarily from the plant and fungal communities, the last couple of decades, the pharmaceutical industry sort of threw away a lot of nature. Although it's something that, we've been studying for hundreds of years, they just decided, their chemists and their fancy labs could do things better than nature could. I never accepted that, especially due to the fact that most of the organisms here have been here a lot longer than us.
Yes.
The tree outside my window here, its great-great-great-grandfathers and so forth, was here a billion years ago. Survived ice ages and extinctions and solar flares and all sorts of crazy stuff that most likely would kill us pretty quickly. So I placed my bets and sort of on the side of nature, and that we've sort of missed a lot when we sort of discarded the natural world and trying to do everything inside a lab. But in general, regenerative medicine as an area is definitely growing and coming online. It's much more heavily based on sort of the stem cell area now, but we've chosen sort of not to go that route and focus instead on sort of more traditional biologics in our development program.
So I got to ask, probably one of the things that bugs a lot of people, especially in these circles of skeptics and all that, is, are you guys affiliated in any way, shape, or form? I'm assuming you're not, but you're not affiliated necessarily with health supplements, products, or so-called natural remedies and stuff like that, right? This is not what you guys are doing.
No, I mean, we start with nature, just like every product out there, whether it's a drug or a dietary supplement or a food, in many ways, starts from nature, and it basically how you design what you want to do. You can get stay close to nature or get a little further away from nature. We work with many animals. So we work with frogs, we work with salamanders, we work with fish, but we're doing very little in terms of the sort of dietary supplement market right now, and much more focusing on how we can isolate really drug-like substances to develop really cutting-edge therapies.
Yeah, so you guys are not out there to try to sell me shark cartilage as some way for me to keep an erection or something.
No.
Damn, I was about to ask if you had any. No, just kidding. Okay, so this is obviously a growing field and a growing business, and it's a thing that has, my God, I could say unlimited potential, right?
Yeah, I mean, we look at it with the exception of infectious diseases, which is, the area of the antibiotics and so forth. Everything on this planet that kills us as humans, from Alzheimer's to cancer to heart disease to diabetes and so forth, is either a disease of degeneration, where we are losing cells of some sort that are not coming back, or a disease of cellular damage where the cells remain but are changed in a bad way. So cancer, autoimmune diseases, fibrotic diseases. So of the $7 trillion that, we are spending around the world nowadays on health, about $3 trillion, which comes from here in the United States and the rest abroad, which is a crazy number when you think about it. And it's in perpetuity too. It's not like it's not like oil, which ultimately at some point in the future runs out. But disease is infinity. We have a pretty big market in front of us, and if we can impact disease as opposed to just treat, like the pharmaceutical industry likes to do, give you a little pill that you get from Rite Aid and take for the next 20 years. If we can, regenerate your brain or regenerate your spinal cord or regenerate your heart and start over again, we solved a lot of problems that cost a lot of money. And so we think not only will we have an impact on sort of the healthcare bill, let's say, but for the first time really be able to at least try to shrink it so that we're not, focusing so much on so-called sick care as the model's been for the last 100 years, but more of actual curative care.
So you mentioned that you were out of Philadelphia, and I have to ask the question because now we're talking about healthcare systems, and of course, being Canadian, we have a very different system than you guys do. Do you, in your capacity as an American company, do you find you're getting a better response from government entities or from private corporations when it comes to biomimicry and using the technology you guys are producing?
It's a great question. It really depends on the country and sort of the different regulatory dynamics. We see, obviously, the U.S. is a very in terms of its regulatory system for therapeutics, extremely conservative. Although we spend a tremendous amount of the total drug spend of the entire world here, it still takes a long time, 15 to 20 years, to get a new therapeutic through. So we are seeing moves in other countries that are really interesting to us. For example, Japan recently instituted what was called conditional approval of some regenerative medicine products. So instead of going through 3 phases of clinical trial, if people are dying, they're allowing them to try in phase 2, where there is already evidence of safety and efficacy, just not the extremely long-term studies that they want to see for phase 3. This makes a lot of sense in an era where we realize that 20-year time frames for drugs, a lot of people die in that process. So it's very interesting, sort of the different niches that we're seeing around the world open up, and that it is, the old model that, we would only do everything in the United States and then worry about the rest of the world later is really getting turned on its head, because there's dozens of countries now, whether we're talking about, Colombia or Turkey or Thailand, which are really coming on strong with regard to the way they look at and approve and regulate new therapeutic substances. And it's a... even though we're a small U.S. company, we kind of say we have to be global in terms of, what we're doing. Because if it takes 20 years to get to market here, but only 12 in the Middle East or Southeast Asia, we got to be in the Middle East and Southeast Asia before. So
yes,
we're being very flexible with our sort of regulatory outlook.
And that brings me to probably a point that I think a lot of people have a tendency to fear when it comes to these new medicine, new technologies, is they fear the profit incentive. A lot of people have a tendency to say stuff like, "Oh, big pharma is out to get you. Oh, they had a cure for cancer forever. They just don't want to give it to you because it's more profitable to have a person, with a lifetime treatment than a one-time shot, and he or she is cured." So, how do you reassure the public? Because you guys are at the base of creating new technology. You're not just creating new medicines. You're creating new technologies. How do you reassure the public that you're not doing this to make a quick buck?
Well, it's a wonderful question. Fortunately, I have the experience of having spent time on both sides of the sort of table, per se, being in big pharma and being on the other side of things. People always ask me the question about sort of the pharma conspiracy and where is everything being hidden and why aren't there cures even though you generate $1 trillion a year? And I point out that it's not the stuff's being hidden. It just doesn't exist because the pharma industry was never set up to cure. A cure and a treatment, although those two terms may sound similar, are very different. I point out that, the difference between a treatment and a cure is, it's not like asking General Motors or Mercedes or Toyota to build electric cars instead of internal combustion engines. It's almost like asking them to stop making cars entirely and build, some type of flying vehicle. It's just not what they do. And so I reassure that this isn't another situation of something positive that will get shut down rapidly, because we're in a very different era where, frankly, big pharma can't allow for it anymore because they're in bad shape. If this was 30 years ago, it would have been a different story. But now what you have these giant 50, 60, $70 billion companies that need new products because they're losing them. So while they're losing their product revenues, they're also promising Wall Street, or Wall Street wants to see certain growth. It's not going to come from within. So here we are in 2018. It's a much different time, and although they are this, large companies, they're really shells. They're basically marketing entities that don't do much inside. So they really need us. And so we have a much stronger position where we're not really in the position to say, hey, they'll take it and throw it away because they can't do that. That will just hasten their death. So we're pretty confident that the times are different. That based on what we see, not only what we're doing, but in some of the moves that other groups are making in this position in terms of curative interventions as opposed to just treatments, that times have changed. And clearly 2018 is much different than, the 1980s.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Used to be.
So when BioQuark goes out there, are you guys... What really drives you? Is it really the research of new discovery, or is it more the profit motive yet again? For example, I give the example that a few years ago we had the Ebola scare, and the United States was scrambling to find something to do something, and the pharmaceutical companies could not respond until they actually found a vaccine here in Canada in a government lab. Now, something like Ebola would not be profitable for a company, but a company like BioQuark, which has such a huge field of, like I said, unlimited potential, I'm assuming here that what drives you guys is the potential for the discovery, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, it's look, at my core, and just as a side note, I'm 49 years old, but I'm a child, technically, inside. I grew up loving science fiction, loving comic books, and I always, dreamed about how, we could improve, enhance the human ability, right?
Yes.
Whether, it's, healing or resistance to cancer or a long life or whatever it has to do, I have this childish sort of zeal inside me to do big things of this nature. On top of that, I watched, my father die of spinal cancer, my mother die of congestive lung disease. My grandparents die of cancer and heart disease. And I sit here in a $1 trillion industry, or I sat in a $1 trillion industry, and I was kind of a little pissed off that despite the fact that we made $1 trillion a year in the pharmaceutical industry, we couldn't cure a damn thing. And so my parents are gone, my grandparents are gone, but now I have 3 children of my own.
Yes.
And a lovely wife, too. They are the future. And so if I couldn't do it for my parents and my grandparents, I'm damn well going to do it for them. So, of course, there is a profit here, but profit is 20 years old. Yeah. It's down the road. Biotech is not like making a new app.
No, of course not.
If you want to get rich in biotech, you're not probably, because the rates of failure are so high. So, of course, I see that, hey, if we cure cancer in 15 years, there'll be money to be made. But today, the real motive is succeeding and being passionate. I'm very passionate about solving the problems that the last 100 years of trillions of dollars of revenue we're not able to solve.
I'm surprised by the comment you said that the rate of failure is so high, because you would think if you are mimicking what's already done in nature, you already have a bit of a blueprint. So where does the failure kind of occur? Does it occur in defining an application as to our human lives, or is it in reproducing what nature's been doing?
Right. No, okay. Let me clarify that one. No, in cases where we stay close to nature, failure is not high. Failure is high where, for instance, the pharmaceutical company, as an example, in the past has found something in the rainforest and then taken it back to the lab and then tweaked this and added a fluorine group here and a bromine group here and modified it a million ways to make something highly patentable.
Yes.
Which is then super toxic.
Yes.
or starts killing livers 5 years from now and they don't know about it. When you stay somewhat close to nature, remember, nature puts these things here. The evolutionary process creates substances that are meant to be here. And genomically, because, we are, people, not everyone likes to hear this, but, we are 99.2% chimpanzee and, we're 92% pufferfish and all this. There is a connection of similarities between many species, just like the salamanders, and humans. It's there. We're not saying we want to genetically engineer anybody, but what we want to say is we're very similar. And so if we listen to nature, we see what works across species, we can have some common sense and we can have some increasing of the odds. But yeah, when you do things the pharma way of taking things and dramatically modifying them just for patentability and getting 5 extra years of such and such, that's where problems happen. And that's been the major issue in terms of the failure rate.
Okay, so let's dig a bit deeper here. So if we're going to keep this in layman's term, if you look at the natural world, you have your fauna and you have your flora. Now, when it comes to potential discoveries and discoveries to be made in nature that we can actually imitate and maybe apply to the human life, where do we find more potential? Do we find more in the animal kingdom or in the plant kingdom?
Both. The answer to that is both, and I'll explain why. The first 100 years of the pharma industry was based on what we'll call the reductionist model of trying to blast apart a plant and finding the best thing. I make the analogy, like my cup of coffee sitting here right now has about 600 different natural phytochemicals in it. Caffeine is one of them. So the difference between, caffeine may be the most potent stimulant in this cup of coffee, but there's hundreds of other things there that have benefit. We just have not studied them all. So from one perspective, we missed a large dimension of what's in the natural world in terms of the plant kingdom. There's estimated we've only touched like a couple percent of all plant species out there anyway. But on top of that are the animals. And that's why we've been spending time, fish, amphibians, worms, starfish, so forth. And the reason we work here is in the terminology, sort of the life sciences. It's sort of a running joke in sort of the area of biology that, the first thing you ever do in a lab to study life is kill stuff, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
But it's called the life sciences. So what we're focused on, we're not focused on killing things and grinding them up. We're focused on keeping things alive and studying the real-time biology of what goes on when that poor salamander loses its tail due to a predator. What's going on in real time in that spinal cord? What cells are being produced? What proteins are being secreted to help grow and extend the tail? So life science is getting back to the sort of holistic approach. And lastly, a term we use, combinatorial methods. A lot of, once again, what the pharmaceutical industry has loved to produce are so-called single magic bullets. They want one thing that they can put in a pill and patent and give to you for the next 20 years.
Yes.
They forget, though, about the combinations of materials that are found in the natural world. Once again, going back to this tree for a moment, outside my window, when it gets sick, it doesn't take 10 milligrams of penicillin. It secretes and synthesizes combinatorial mixtures of chemicals to kill its fungi or its bacterial invader. Very different than what we do, but it survived 1 billion years. So we have a lot to learn in sort of these three groups or these three sort of areas that have really been overlooked in terms of the natural world.
Okay. A quick question for you. With BioQuark, do you guys have a section of your company that researches maybe new ways of doing things we've been doing all our lives? Now, not necessarily new components or new products, but let me give you an example. Running. We've been running all our lives, and for as long as humanity has been around. But for example, when the Japanese met the first Europeans, they would run very differently, because they used to carry like their swords on their side. So they had to be taught to do the normal, typical running and swinging your arms back and forth because they didn't run that way. Or there's a tribe, for example, in Mexico, they're known as the best runners in the world. They're supposed to be the Tajahumaras, I believe they're called. And they have a tendency to run on the ball of their foot. So their foot sort of starts mimicking a bit the animal hind leg. And then the knee acts as a spring. Is there a part of BioQuark Industries that studies these kind of things?
We don't spend too much time. It's a great question. We let's say we respect the area, and one of the things you're describing, sort of biomechanics. So the biomechanics sits above a lot of the lower functions of the body, but it controls them all.
Yes.
So, for instance, genes, which has been the hot area for the last 10, 20 years, they don't do anything.
Yeah.
They don't do anything on their own. Genes have to take their inputs and their instructions from higher forces. They take their instructions from the tissues, the bioelectric potential that flows through the organs, from the viscous extracellular fluids, and of course, very importantly, from what you just pointed out, mechanics, the forces of mechanotransduction. Every time you take a step, there is a force that's permeating through your body that trickles down and affects, not just your knee, but proteins, genes, everything at the lower levels. So while we don't do too much studying of sort of motion or the biomechanics in different, what goes on in a swimming organism or an octopus or things like that, we do appreciate that you have to. One of the things that makes the salamander and the planarian and all these other species so good at regenerating is they integrate biomechanical movements and forces into the regenerative process. And this is a very important sort of non-drug type of clue that goes into our thinking.
Okay.
But the things you do point out are indeed fascinating to me, just as a topic.
Yeah, it's
an individual topic.
It's a field you guys can relate to, but it's not something the company necessarily focuses on. So the idea, for example, the prosthetic foot being replaced with a prosthetic blade that becomes much more efficient for running is not necessarily something you guys get into right away.
No.
You guys focus more on the biology and the deeper and the cellular level.
Exactly.
Okay, great. So then let's talk about what are you guys working on right now? What is it incredible and exciting that's coming on the horizon for BIOQUARK?
All right. Well, the three areas that we're, let's say, our core therapeutic focus. One is neurology, and this is. While there is some debate, obviously, that Alzheimer's disease and dementia don't kill as many people as heart disease, it is clearly the number one problem that we have as a society headed our way. People say, well, heart disease and cancer kill more people, and we respond, well, we have pretty good drugs for heart disease, and we have average drugs for cancer, but there is nothing out there right now to prevent this sort of tsunami of Alzheimer's and dementia that's coming, and we need to be prepared for it. Pfizer, fourth largest drug company in the world, just got out of Alzheimer's research entirely. So it really lights a fire under us that we need to get things done. So in the area of neurology, we're heavily focused on Alzheimer's disease, how we can regenerate neurons in the brain that have been destroyed, as well as change and remodel the cells that transition to a later stage of Alzheimer's. We're very interested in traumatic brain injury and spinal cord injury. And this is an area we've had a lot of success in terms of how one gets to reconnect the severed spinal cord in a human being to reverse paralysis. So these are the core of our neurology research focus. Secondarily, we are very interested in cancer, but not from the perspective that we want to find a new way to kill. We are very interested in all of the species that don't kill cancer, but turn it into something else. Many of the lower organisms on this planet that are resistant and resilient to cancer don't focus on a kill event. They focus on changing the tumor back into what it originally was: healthy breast tissue, healthy colon tissue, healthy lung tissue. And so we are taking, once again, the clues from the natural world on not a kill event, but a change event in our oncology program.
Is it possible to adapt to the tumor in a way? Leave the tumor the way it is, but, to maybe, instead of reverting it back to a benign thing, to maybe change the functions around them to maybe isolate it?
Yeah, well, that's actually the main step.
Okay.
What they do, they similar to the way they regenerate, they basically look at the microenvironment that the tumor is in, and then slowly but surely they reprogram the cells to eventually swallow and integrate that tissue in as normal tissue, and basically eliminate the metastatic malignant phenotype. This is a funny thing. Not funny, but it's one of these areas of forgotten research. We've known about this as a medical research community since the 1940s. We never acted on it because it was one of those, what are you going to do with this? There's a tank of frogs here that gets cancer, and then they get rid of the cancer. But no one really cared about it. But we've known about it since the 1940s.
That's interesting. And
it is a very important area that should not be swept under the rug, but should be learned from. And the last area, metabolic, because while we're interested in diabetes, one cannot overlook the connections now that the diabetic state, specifically type 2 diabetes, and the hundreds of millions of people that have this condition nowadays, how it trickles down to everything else. So, not only does it put you in horrible condition, but it destroys your kidneys, it destroys your heart, and now even Alzheimer's is being looked at as sort of a third form of diabetes. So once again, control of that whole metabolic sugar dynamic, that's our third major focus. And so while we would like to go broader, we're a small company still.
Of course.
But clearly these are, in our opinion, three important therapeutic targets where the need is large and where we feel we should put our resources.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course these resources are put to combat issues with just being human, essentially. But is there also a part of BIOQUARK that looks outside at maybe just enhancing the bigger, better people? almost like, for lack of a better term, the super soldier formula and stuff like that, right? Is there something that you guys can be working on?
Yeah, I mean, we've, occasionally we get the proposals, the requests from proposals from the Department of Defense and organizations like that, mainly related to sort of battlefield, wound healing and sort of enhanced, type of, musculature, things of this nature. It's interesting to us, and I'm, more of the connection, obviously, to aging and to frailty, loss of muscle mass. We don't have. My previous company had a lot of resources that could apply and work sort of in sort of the government grant zone. It's just not. We don't have time really. Because some of those contracts take months to fill out, and then the bidding process. We love to be there. It's just not. It's not the core right now, but definitely, yes. I mean, muscle regeneration, whether it's the heart or whether it's the skeletal muscle, clearly you have a lot of muscles in the body and they fall apart over time. So,
and even on the technology, I mean, there is, for example, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the U.S. Navy ordered many of their ships to have what they call shark skin on the bottom of their hull, so they could actually glide easier through the water instead of simple steel like they used to. And that would be a good example of biomimicry as well, but not necessarily what you guys are working on at BioQuark. That's a really cool application. The neat one, which was just announced a couple days ago. Actually, I'm going to listen into. They have a web call coming up in a couple weeks. But DARPA recently announced that they were beginning to look into cryptobiosis, so the science of hibernation. Oh yeah, of course. Which is in its own, how to if somebody's bleeding to death and so forth in the battlefield, how to basically, if you don't have the resources to substitute blood or stop bleeding and all that, how you slow down a body. Yeah, or even just to interstellar traveling or going to Mars, something like that. Exactly. These applications are fantastic. All right, so if we're looking at, I'm not going to hold you to this, Ira, of course, but if I was to ask you for a small gut feeling, if I say 20 years from now, where do you think we're sitting with this, or 50 years from now? I'm not going to hold on to you. I'm not going to call you back in 20 years and say, hey, you were wrong on this. Don't worry. It's just between you and me. If looking at it from BioQuark perspective in terms of therapeutics in sort of the development arena, definitely within the next 10 years, you will see several registered products in either in the United States and or abroad for some of the therapeutic indications that we just mentioned. Whether we will have full-blown, Alzheimer's indication versus a more niche, specific like a brain wounding or healing, that all remains to be determined. But we definitely will have drug indications within the next 10 years. Wow. What other things will we see? Well, I have been on the record before stating that I believe that definitely within the next 20 years, but most likely sooner, you will see a redefinition of what it means to be dead. The current definition of death, which has been defined since 1968, is that of brain death. Defined at the Harvard Medical School 50 years ago as an irreversible form of coma. However, once again, going back to nature, there are many species on this planet whose brains you can destroy, some which you can chop out and throw away, and the brains regrow, and the animal does not die, and the animal remembers things. So we believe that there are definite answers, not for all forms of death, clearly not things like catastrophic death that you may find in a war zone or murder victim that is not found over a long period of time, but the short-term sort of acute damage that causes 50,000 people a day to leave this world, automobile crashes and flying off a motorcycle and accidentally drowning in a pool, these forms of brain death most likely will be reversible within the next decade. Whoa. That's a hell of a statement. Yeah, it's I stand by it. That's a very impressive. My God, I'm flabbergasted by that.
that is it's an area in terms of the severe disorders of consciousness, which also include coma and persistent vegetative state, which the medical community has really devoted no resources to. Yet we feel that there are very important areas of exploration for those indications that will, let's say, really improve the the human condition, much before 50 years, let's say.
Especially if you're saying that not only you could probably reactivate and regrow part of the brain, but also reconnect some of the neural pathways. That's absolutely flabbergasting. Wow, that'd be amazing.
That is, it's something that we began to explore a couple of years ago. The press went a little nutty with it, with all the zombie stuff and Hollywood and all that bit. But in general, the core concept is, hey, we have a different set of technologies in 2018 than we had in 1968. We have quite a bit of evidence from the natural world, and we have several dozen reported cases, although these get swept under the rug also in the literature, but of spontaneous brain death reversal in infants. Putting it all together, it points to the fact that it's probably something that we should take a new look at 50 years later and see what we can do about it. And on top of all that, just as a side, sort of cocktail trivia thing, when we die of, traditional brain death cascade, everything below the brain stem is very much alive. It's one of those insult to injuries that, you don't think about, but people that are dead can do lots of things. And if we can just figure out how to reconnect the one part of the brain stem, which controls your breathing and heartbeat, we will have solved the problem. That is a big problem. So we think it's a viable area to focus some of our resources on as well.
Yeah, even brings the possibility of doing some kind of a brain transfer or a brain transplant. If the brain is completely hopeless to survive, maybe the body is still good and could still be used as another vehicle, I guess, for another brain.
Yeah, there's a group that's trying to do that in China, actually, I believe sometime this year.
Yes.
I haven't thought too much about the head transplants and the brain transplants, although the first brain transplant operations occurred back in the late 1960s at the University of Indiana, and actually the model organisms at the time were frogs and salamanders. And the funny thing was, it was done in a laboratory, a guy named Paul Piche. He actually, I forget what the order was. I forget whether the salamander or the frog is the carnivore and one is the herbivore. But when he did the brain swap, the frog that normally just ate plants started eating worms. It was kind of interesting set of experiments, but it's very well documented in an interesting book called Shuffle Brain, which I encourage everyone to get a copy of.
Fantastic. Ira, I can't help but talk a bit about the current political climate, especially you guys have in the United States. From up here in Canada, it doesn't seem like it's a climate that's very conducive to helping a company like BIOQUARK survive. So, unless I'm wrong, you're in Philadelphia, you tell me. But if I'm correct, what would you recommend the layperson do to maybe get the government to be more encouraging towards companies like BIOQUARK?
I mean, there's a lot of different advocacy groups that get involved in, spreading the word, at the level of individual diseases or certain technologies. We're somewhat I say somewhat fortunate, but we made the decision early on when we set this company up not to model it on anything controversial. And when I say not controversial, not like death is not a controversial topic, but when it came to some of the things that were getting people angry, namely cloning,
yeah, of course,
and chimera systems, making a pig with human this and that, we stayed away from all that.
Yeah.
We also stayed away from genetic engineering for the main reason that, people got really pissed off recently when the first couple therapies came to market and for $1 million a shot. That stuff doesn't make people happy. We realized that, if 7 billion customers were out there, it didn't make sense to develop or use technologies that only a couple thousand people could afford. So we intentionally modeled the company that way. But when going back to your question, I mean, there's a lot that people can do. I think one very important thing, aside from sort of the advocacy front, is become familiar with the clinical trials database systems that exist in the U.S. and abroad, because this is something that very few people take advantage of. And when they get to the stage where they're so-called no option, where they're at the end of medical care, a very small percentage of all patients, very small percentage, ever seek out a clinical study. And they may not know how, or they might not think that they're a candidate, but there are amazing systems, including the clinicaltrials.gov database here in the U.S., run by the National Institutes of Health, which highlights all of this. And, not everything is happening at, the Mayo Clinic or Johns Hopkins. You might find out that, if you have rheumatoid arthritis and you can't stand the pain, you might find a very interesting clinical study at a hospital, 20 miles down the road from you. I think everyone should learn to use these resources because they're very beneficial in sort of allowing everyone to take control of their health once their clinician has sort of said, hey, we're at the end of my expertise. Yeah. So I think those are important things to follow.
Cool. At the beginning of the interview, you were talking about how some countries like Japan were very open-minded towards what the company was doing. Is the United States still the best place to develop these kind of technologies, according to your company, or are there other countries out there that are vying for the number one position?
Oh, no. If the United States is the best if you're just looking at the market size and if you just want to be a U.S. company. But no, I mean, there's so many things going on right now that we're U.S., we're proud to be a U.S. company, and I'm proud to be American, but I cannot overlook things like, for instance, last year, the government of China did a deal with Merck.
Yes.
Fifth largest drug company in the world. They created a tropical island off the coast of China that is a free zone for experimental use of Merck's therapies now for cancer. So if you're dying of X, God forbid, you cannot access that therapy in Canada or the United States. Right now, you can fly and take a vacation on Hainan Island in China and use Merck's products. This is unheard of. Because this whole area of sort of medical tourism, which may have been seen as rather niche in the past, now you have, the fifth largest drug company in the world and the largest government in the world that is doing something creative like that. So, you have Japan conditional approval, you have this initiative in China, and then on top of all this, you have major sort of research institutions operating elsewhere. So like you have Harvard Medical School that is set up in Dubai, and you have Cornell in Qatar and Newcastle University from the UK and Malaysia. So it's really become a really international system of medical research. So it's not the 1980s anymore. We cannot just focus on the US and worry about everything else later. We have to really know where the action is happening. And hey, if it's not the U.S. and the U.S. is, where we get on the market in 12th compared to Colombia or Turkey or Thailand, that's what we're going to do. We have to go where we can have the most impact for patients today.
Are you sure you don't want to move to Canada? We get stronger beer.
It's cold up there.
No, it's not that cold. It's actually almost 80 degrees today. Ira, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. I really appreciate all the explanation you gave us. If people wanted to learn more about what BioQuark is doing and what you guys are up to, where can they reach you?
Just come to our website, BIOQUARK.com, BIOQUARK. We have sort of laid out everything there in terms of our relationships and our research programs and everything we have going on. We're fairly transparent about it. So reach out. Any questions, contact us through the website. We'd be glad to talk about what we're up to.
Fantastic. Ira, before I let you go, I got to have you say, hi, I'm Ira Pastor of BioQuark, and I took a left at the valley.
Hi, I'm Ira Pastor from BioQuark Incorporated, and I took a left at the valley.
And that was Ira Pastor of BioQuark. What a fascinating topic. I could have gone on this thing. It's amazing the hope and the technology and the potential that a company like that is working on, and it just makes the future so bright. A future that, a lot of people have a tendency to go doom and gloom, and when we talk to theists, they have a tendency to think, oh, this is the end of the world. When I see a company like BioQuark, it says, no, this is the kind of company that sends us to a future that's more like, I don't know, Star Trek or something like that, where the human potential is just absolutely limitless. Well, thank you so much for joining me on the show today, guys. You can follow us at leftatvalley.com. You can follow us at... you can send us an email at leftatvalley@outlook.com. You can follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, at LATV Podcast. And give us a 5-star review whenever you hear us. It really helps us, and it helps others find the show as well. Coming up next week, we'll be talking to our old friend Christopher DiCarlo, the author of How to Be a Really Good Pain in the Ass. And he's going to be talking to us about the stuff he had to go through. And then, of course, on the 24th, we'll have to be talking to Robert Stanley from the Right to Reason podcast. That will be very interesting. One of the best voices I've heard on the other side of the mic. At the end of the month, we're talking to Ethan Siegel about the science of Star Trek. So put your geek on when we're doing this. And in April, we'll be talking to singer-songwriter Shelley Siegel. That should be interesting. On the 14th, we'll be talking to a Crystal's child, Jessica Schwab. That should also be interesting. And, of course, we'll also be talking on the 21st to Dr. Hector Garcia about the psychology of religious oppression. And at the end of April, we'll be talking to Dr. Ben Davis and nuclear power. What a star-studded lineup we got going on for you guys. We do a lot of hard work for you guys. I sure hope you guys appreciate it, and I certainly do. And, God, that's all I have to say for now. So, until we speak again, until next time, guys.
Non-believers are evil. What a fucked up statement. Do you realize what you're saying? But according to your book, this is how your God made me. Skeptical of anything that contradicts history, denies evolution, hates science, promotes mystery. I'd rather see the truth than to bask in my own ignorance. Rather be alone than surrounded by damn idiots. As long as there's a breath in my body, you can bet your last dollar I'll be working hard fighting this problem. Religion is a disease, it comes from culture, only true on a regional scale. Science is universal. Are you to say that Horus isn't real, but Jesus is? Or Zeus, Thor, Mithra, Vishnu, you don't believe in them? I think the reason is apparent. You do what you're told and believe in the God assigned by your parents. I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith in unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist. Atheist. I'm an atheist. Atheist. I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist. Now let me take a sec. Don't mean to sound so hateful, but I swear to God, pun intended, I find it disgraceful that thousands of children are raped by priests, and since they're holy men of God, they get away scot-free. And the Pope does his very best to keep it on the hush. Don't wanna affect business, he loves money too much. We know that they love the kids, but how the fuck can we protect them while they planning to molest them? We teaching them to respect them.
Fuck that.
The system is broke down, working backwards, and the only action or tactic I plan to practice now is to attack them. The parties of God's hands are bloodstained, millions of murders by believers, and they're all in God's name. And let me take a sec, don't mean to sound so hateful, but I swear to God, pun intended, I find it disgraceful that many atheists are told to be quiet. You're not alone, speak your mind, time to let it be known. I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith in unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist.